there, welcome in to Take Two with Hawk. He is the Hawk, Dr. Brent Hawkins, Superintendent of Schools here in Copperas Cove ISD. I'm Director of Communications, Kurtis Quillen, and it is Tuesday, October 7th, 2025 as we record this. Dr. Hawkins, how are you?
Well, you know, the sun's always shining in Dog Nation, but it's shining a little bit less today than what it has been. But all in all, there's some great things going on, so it's it'd be real difficult not to be happy today.
We got our windows tinted in the communications office. The four of us are so much happier. It's so much cooler in this office. He walks in today and goes, man, it's cold in here.
I keep wanting to walk in and turn a light on. I'm like, if y'all turn the lights off? So,
it's a exciting time in Copperas Cove ISD. If you are watching or listening to this episode, it is Thursday, October 9th or later, depending on when you get access to it. And so let's start, as we always do, with good things. And it's on today's good things, you want to talk about pep rallies and not the spirit stick football, volleyball kind.
Yeah, I think last week you saw a pink out pep rally that was in the dark at the high school gymnasium, and I went to that and enjoyed it. Come away a little bit disappointed because my seniors of the class of 2026 have never won a spirit stick, and so I kind of jumped in to try to help them and realized that we're probably going to need to make some deposits. We're gonna need to do some practice in order to make sure that our decibels are a little bit louder. The junior class is an anomaly, the class of 2027, because I think they're just loud by nature. And so we've got an uphill battle, but we're committed to trying to figure out some way to get these kids to leave as alumni and win a spirit stick. And so I think if they do win a spirit stick, we need to call our district chair and find out how much it's going to cost when they rush the field, because I think the whole senior class will probably definitely reverberate the Bulldog Gymnasium when that happens.
When's the last time before Friday that you had climbed up into the bleachers at a pep rally?
Well, I'm always doing something, but as far as a pep rally goes, it might have been like back in 1990. We were so high, we were so mighty. I was a senior of 1990, and so I can't remember doing it, but it was just an opportunity that happened, and I was just trying to help the kids out. So, but that's not the real pep rallies that we're talking about. This year we wanted to make sure that we were having academic pep rallies as well on all of our campuses, and so we've got a fresh start of that. I can say that it has been wonderful on multiple levels. The first level is that there's connection between the campuses, and what I mean by that, I mean that as I went to some of these academic pep rallies, you had the Cove Junior High cheer or Copperettes from the high school, or somebody was connecting with the lower grade levels. And I think that's so important, to have a 6-year-old to look out there and see Sparky and know that that's your high school mascot, and is going to be your high school mascot is just a neat way to tie that school spirit together. And I appreciate the sponsors that took time, to go down and take the kids and the transportation that got them down there to make that connection. In my career, I've been very much blessed to be in some real small districts, and to watch a senior walk a 5-year-old to class in some of those instances is something that isn't lost by me. I think it's very important that a kid in high school has an obligation and a care for a 5-year-old. I've seen kids in the cafeteria at Woden ISD that go by and help a 4-year-old open up their milk You know, 4-year-olds, they struggle with first semester opening up milk and orange juice, and to see that was great. But then to see the competition, you know, in society today, if we have one thing that we can teach kids, it's how to compete. When you take away a society's ability to compete, then you've conquered that society. I believe that was Nikita Khrushchev that said that, and I think he was spot on. I mean, he might have been a communist, but I think that was a very, you know, you can find a little truth in everybody, no matter which way they lean, and so to watch these kids compete based on their attendance, academics, and behavior, and the uniqueness that some of these campuses did was absolutely outstanding. And you know, we've put a big emphasis on attendance this year because we really feel like that in curriculum instruction we're doing the right things. We've had 4 solid years of B's, and people, academic ratings across the Central Texas would love to switch places for the most part with us from the makeup of our student body. And I just think that, you know, we've got these kids and they're competing with one another, and they're making it fun. You know, school should be fun, learning should be fun, and I think it just adds that to it. And I appreciate all the faculty and staff and what they've poured into it to make that special for those kids.
Yeah, I've seen some of the videos and the images that came out of it. I haven't gotten to go to as many as you have, and it looks like they're a lot of fun. And so kudos to those elementary campuses that for putting those together. And like you said, kudos to all the secondary sponsors for contributing to the success that those will have and driving that academic success that comes along with that. So that's a really good thing to start things off today as we pivot toward Bond 2025. I want to start here with, so again, recording this October 7th. Last night we had our final community walk and talk. And I know people are going to ask this, and so the turnout was kind of what we expected it to be at these, but when they got to see, each campus got its night, and we hosted, it was the same setup, it's just the tour that was offered was of that campus and not of another one, because that's not where we were. And so coming out of the walk and talks, I want to ask you kind of where you gauge the community is at right now.
Well, I think we've done a tremendous amount of education with the community, conversation with the community. It's been a long, long road from when we first started the whole process with the grassroots committee to get to where we are today. And, you know, I think it was important that we open up for the community. You know, we want to make sure that everybody has the facts. Our website's important. You know, the previous podcast that we've done has a voluminous amount of information in them, and I think we'll go over a bunch today. But you know, I think the community that came was appreciative. That they had a opportunity to one-on-one, maybe not always with me, but with staff, and I was glad that we were able to work those in, because you know, here's the deal, and you said it a little bit earlier, Kurtis. I try to, since January 14th, if there's a school activity going on, I've been at it, with an exception of last Saturday. That was my wife's. You know, she's married a coach and a superintendent, and I'm always pouring into the school district and the kids and the staff. And so that one day I devoted to her, and so I took her and had a birthday day with her, and spent that. But other than that, especially over the last 2 or 3 months, it's been multiple events every evening, and Monday evening was no different. You know, we had the walk and talks, but if you look on the district calendar, that's not all of the events that goes on. And I just feel like that if a kid is doing it, then I need to be there to support it. And it does not matter what it is. I've still got some events that I got on my calendar that I definitely want to get to, but I can't. There's only one of me, and I can't be at everything. But Lord knows I try, and there's events that I schedule, and I'll stay for half of one and take off to another. And so, but hey, that is a wonderful life that I get to live, and a great part of my job is to be able to watch these kids compete, be able to watch these kids perform. I mean, the next generation that we're growing up is something that it definitely isn't lost on me of how important that is. But it's important, and since I've been here, I've hammered that home that we need to support the dogs and the lady dogs, because these kids, we owe it to them. They pour, they could be sitting on the couch at home doing nothing, and for them to get out and devote part of their life, for us to go and watch them compete with other communities and perform with other communities, that's special. And so, with all that said, I know that as busy as I've been, so's the community. There is a lot of things going on. There is something every night in CCISD that you can go to and enjoy, and so I know that it's difficult for people to get there. And so we've had people that came to all three walk and talks, and then we had people that just showed up for one because that was all they could do. And people apologized and, "Hey, Dr. Hawkins, I'm sorry I couldn't come to one." Well, hey, that's great. Most important thing is that we get your questions answered, and then I think the extension off of that is that we've talked, and we're going to continue the tours. We're not going to the walk and talk aspect of it, of having all of our staff that are there to meet your needs. We've done that, which has kind of been our version of a town hall meeting.
Yes.
And we just branded it something different because we kind of like to be different. But I think that has happened. But the power, the thing that we've learned out of these walk and talks is that the tour. And so I know that Kurtis is busy. He's looking at maybe some way to do not a virtual tour, but a digital tour, because virtual is when people can kind of talk back and forth on stuff, but just the digital impact of recording and walking through and seeing what those people saw. He's working on that, and communications is overloaded. I know that we're doing the best we can to get information out there, but we want to continue to have opportunities, and we have had opportunities. We had the Rotary Club. We've had multiple clubs and organizations that didn't come to the walk and talk, but they had 20 people, and they wanted to come and see the school facilities and what the kids was learning in. And so we were able to schedule that for them, and I think it's important that we continue to do that.
Yeah, again, those digital tours, like Dr. Hawkins said, we are working on those. I think we've shot one. We're trying to get the others put together as well, and so we'll have that kind of information for you as soon as we're able, on the district's YouTube channel and possibly on other social media platforms, kind of depending on how they turn out as far as length. And again, if you want to schedule a tour, the easiest way to do that, email the communications office, CCISD communications, plural, at CCISD.com. We'll get you set up with, if not lead park ranger Jimmy Shuck, it'll be either one of the two of us or someone who is knowledgeable, who can answer your questions on that tour. So again, that's CCISD communications at CCISD.com. With that, let's go into a segment I kind of want to call misinformation management, because there are some misinformed narratives. I don't want to say misinformed people, but misinformed narratives that have been shared in community groups that don't either paint the whole picture or don't paint the correct picture that is sitting in front of the class. And so with that, let's start with the overarching theme. There's been this notion that the district is dishonest. And I'm the guy who's responsible for putting the information out. I don't think that's fair.
No, Curtis, it's not fair, and you know, I didn't really know where we was going to start at, but I've got all these bullets on the paper that I have a duty to the community to make sure that I address, and you know, so the first one, you know, the title of what I put down was community unity, and I think that is so critically important. And if you can't look at what I've tried to do since I've come to Cove, is to unify and to breathe life into our community. Because I have, you know, listen, I didn't come to Cove because, and excuse my language here if this offends you, because it sucks, okay? I came to Cove because I saw what I thought is something that had really been great at one time, and you know, I just think that it can really be special here. I saw potential. I moved my family across the state of Texas, halfway across the state of Texas, to a place that I don't have to work. I can retire today. I think I make, I don't know, a few pennies on the dollar of what I make. That I could retire and have less stress, and I am very passionate about the opportunity to make an impact on kids. And so, like I said, I don't have to work. You know, I'm doing it because that's what I take joy in, is trying to help kids and staff and build community in our school. And so, but what I saw out of Cove, the things that we can do better, is we can unify as a community better. We can unify as an organization better, and we need more life in what we're doing. You know, the school business isn't a box that you check off. It's not a job. It is a calling, and it's not about how we can do the least that we can do and get by. It's that we ought to be doing everything all out, because that's what we ask of our students. And so it does not matter if it's you know, just ideas that I've got. You know, I shared one at one of my meetings, and had some conversation about that, was homecoming. You know, I'm not being critical of the district. I'm being reflexive and reflective of what we do as practice, and I want to make it better for those we serve. And just take homecoming. Okay, so what is it we can do to make homecoming better? Well, there's a lot of things we can do to make homecoming. And one of the things I talked about was a parade. You know, we need a homecoming parade. We need tailgating, homecoming parades. We need bonfires, all things that we can work towards that breathe more life into who we are. When we drive through Cove, we need to see bulldogs. You know, we've been working with the Chamber of Commerce, and they're steady on the track to get more bulldogs out in town, and I'm very proud of their relationship that we're forging with them to make sure that happens. We need to see bulldog flags. We need to show these kids who we are and who's behind them. And so that's been my goal from day one. But when you talk about dishonesty and stuff like that, that's, you know, I don't, other than, what is the motive?
Right.
What is the motive to be dishonest? You know, because like I said, you got public servants that are out here that are rolling their sleeve up, and they're working to serve our kids. They're working to serve our community. And that's a noble practice. And that's something that should be cherished. Our community should be proud of every employee, regardless of what job title it is. The 1,300 plus employees in this district are out here not to pick up a paycheck, but to really leave a legacy. And so when you see people that continue to call the board of trustees liars, that they talk about dealing with lies and mistruths and everything. I'm going to do my best in walking through these things to try to clear up some of these things, and you can ask me questions as we go. But I just think that's sad commentary, because it's not that I don't know that there's miscommunication. I think there's an intentional trying to muddy the water. And look, I don't care how you vote. And we've talked about the disclaimer before. Vote against the bond. If you think that you want to set a standard for this school district of where it is, vote against it. If you want to set a different standard, then you can vote for it. That's not what I'm talking about here. This is something that goes far beyond that, and it hits at the integrity of the people on the committee that did the long range plan. It hits at the integrity of the staff. It hits at the integrity of the school board. There is no vast conspiracy out here to mislead people, because there's no motive to. What would be the motive? What would anybody gain by telling people lies? Because at the end of the day, people are working so hard that nobody cares about that. When you're working hard and you're trying to do the right thing, there's no time for lying. That's not an issue. So, and unfortunately, I think we got some people out here in society today, as you get on social media, that's become real comfortable with spreading misinformation. And it's like a sport. They enjoy doing it. I told somebody the other day, it's the same people that if Santa Claus landed his sled right out here in the parking lot, they'd boo Santa Claus. They're going to find something wrong, and that's a shame. And so we're not going to allow that narrative to perpetuate. And so I think that's why it's so important, is to walk through the facts of all of this, so that we've done our job. Once the facts are out there, we've done our job. And so that's important to me. These people that I'm talking about are the people who, quite frankly, they've been invited to come and meet with me. And we're getting to a point now that where my time is running out on meeting with them. I've openly said that we would sit down maybe in a format like this and discuss to learn from each other. But those invitations have fallen on deaf ears. They have not done any of those things. And so, those of us who are trying to do the things that we need to do for kids, I think that's the thing, is it's time to focus on us doing the things that we need to do for kids, because obviously people who lead misinformation campaigns, that's not what they're about. And so, let me walk through some of the things though, that we can talk about. I'll lead off with the first one being the TEA. There was a deal to where
I'm glad you brought this up, because it is very different, and I want to let you talk. But this is one that I was glad you brought up.
So there's a post out there on social media that says TEA says that there's $400 million of things that need to be done in the school district. And that is a morsel of truth wrapped around a whole lot of misinformation. And heaven forbid if the school district would put something out there like that. We would be tarred and feathered. But number one, TEA has not done any facility reviews with us. The only thing TEA has done is the safety audit, the vulnerability assessment audit, in which we've done great. We've passed. We've met the minimal standards for the Texas Education Agency on safety. And we weren't, in my former district, we were in the pilot of that. In this district, we were in the first year of that. So there's 3 more years of districts getting that vulnerability audit. But that's not, they don't put any dollar sign on that. So that's not what is being talked about. What is misinformed from TEA, the Texas Association of School Boards, has been contracted with the district for several years to look at our facilities. Okay, and it's like, well, there's an attempt to say that the district has been asleep at the wheel, and it hadn't done its job because there's $400 million worth of facility issues that need to be addressed. Well, in fairness, what it is the Texas Association of School Boards do a study, and if you went in and pushed all of your facilities up to standards right now, it would, they estimate, cost about $400 million. The problem with that is life cycles. So you bought a new car, right? It's a Hyundai what?
Yeah, I bought a Hyundai Elantra back in May.
And how many miles you got on it?
About 13,000.
Okay, 13,000 miles on it. So we know that tires, depending on, several variable factors, those tires are going to wear out on your car.
Yeah.
But you probably aren't going to go down to the tire store right now. They got 13,000 miles on them, so they have some wear on them.
Yes.
They're not new. But if you went down to Discount Tire, they'll sell you 4 brand new tires to go on there, okay? But your tire's not to the end of its wear cycle. It's not to the end of its life cycle.
Right.
Okay? And so that's the best analogy that I can give to everyone out there, is that facilities have life cycles on them. And at the October board meeting, I'm going to give the board a report on the second part of the facility committee recommendation that people forget and want to leave out. Okay, and it talks about the life cycles of, flooring and paint and buildings and boilers and air handlers and air conditioners and roofs and all of that. And so somebody says, we've got $400 million worth of needs. Well, if you wanted to get everything brand new, but just like your car, you're going to get in it this evening and you're going to go home and you're going to continue to use that car until your tires wear out. Mm-hmm. And so we've got some buildings that if we wanted to bring them up to new, take this building that we're in, nice building. It's not to the end of its life cycle,
no,
but it's included in that study. I don't know of anyone that's saying, hey, you need to bring central office up to new. That's a waste of money. And so that's the truth about the $400 million as far as that post goes. Now, I'll also say this. I think in the previous bond, and I talk about Dr. Burns. Dr. Burns isn't here to defend himself, but I think that he threw out a number of $400 million at one point. And you see Dripping Springs. Dripping Springs just passed their bond for $289 million and some change, okay? Well, every school district is different. And y'all have heard me use the number 200 million, 220, I think is what I use. And what I'm doing is I'm taking the square footage of what our facility needs to be and multiplying it by what it would cost to build a new one, based on numbers from construction companies and architects. That's how I come up with that number. Well, the number that Dr. Burns used could be, he's putting ancillary stuff in there. I think the Dripping Spring number was everything for that school except the land purchased. I think they had the land, if I'm not mistaken. And so guess what? Land costs can be extravagant. The architectural design of a building can be extravagant. Based on the architect, they could go into their architect and say, oh no, we want a Taj Mahal. The same amount of square footage could push up to real unreasonable amounts, just like buying a pickup. You can go in and you can buy a pickup, you can buy a Sierra, or you can buy a Denali, and both of those have different features and benefits on it. And the same thing with architecture, the same thing with how many how many programs do you have that's different than other people? And so there's some variation in there. But I think all of that was a bunch of smoke to try to misinform people, because at the end of the day, a new school for the square footage that we would need would go over $200 million, and our bond capacity is $174 million. So, anything on that you can think of?
No, and like I said, I'm glad you brought it up, because the TEA doesn't do those studies, like you said. They oversee the educational product and the safety component.
They're a regulatory agency,
which is why they do safety and not the actual facility itself. And so I think that was an important one, and I was glad you brought it up. But no, and I think there's some others kind of like that. And the next one, because I see your pen hovering over it, you and I talked about this a little bit, kind of a surface level school finance 101 with the people. We say we're calling for a bond, and they forget that there's the two buckets, the two different tax rates in the district. One that is, let's be adults, set by the state, and that's the maintenance and operations one that Dr. Hawkins is holding up. Let me cut to him.
I feel like Vanna White over here, turning the tumbler.
And so you have the one bucket that's maintenance and operations, and one that's interest and sinking. So the maintenance and operations one, we can be adults in the room, it's set by the state. It used to be set by the Board of Trustees. Now the trustees adopt what the state tells them to adopt. Interest and sinking is the rate we're talking about. You cannot move money between the two. That's illegal. And interest in sinking is voted on by the community. That's where you get capital improvements. That is a very surface level, how Kurtis understands it, difference between the two. But there's a little bit more to it that some people don't understand. And I think part of the reason we're bringing this up is we talk about a bond. We post information because, again, we can only talk the facts. And so I'll post a graphic, and then I'll only vote for, I've gotten the comment before, I'll only vote for it if this money can go toward teachers. We can't do that. That's illegal.
Yeah, it's not how the law works. And, we just showed the graphic of two buckets because at the time, Copper's Cove had two buckets. Today, there's only one bucket, and that's the 0.7575 tax rate that we have in maintenance and operations. That's it. That's where we, the Board of Trustees, set the tax rate based on the law. There is no debt. The district has no debt. At the time that we were going through the committee meetings, there was a 2-cent debt, and that's gone. We're debt free as a district. We haven't passed a bond in 20 years. And as I've repeatedly said, every 10 years, according to our financial analyst at Samco Investments, most districts that aren't fast growth districts are passing bonds to stagger the burden, because that's the business model that the state's put in place for us to have to navigate. But you are exactly right, Kurtis. You cannot $100 million of a bond, 150 million, whatever a school district. There's some school districts going out for $1 billion bonds and passing. And so those $1 billion bonds, they can't take part of that money and slip over into teacher salaries. It's against the education code. They can't do that. And so those are two separate issues. Now, if you want to talk about teacher salaries, I can talk.
There is a mechanism for that.
Long and extensive about teacher salaries. In my former district, when I got in my former district, the starting teacher salary was $36,000 a year. The topped out teacher salary was $54,000 a year. When I came to Cove, the starting teacher salary in that district was $60,000 a year. And the tenured teacher salary was, I believe, $78,000. So the starting teacher was above what the tenured teacher was. That took 10 years. That took transforming the way that district functioned. And, no good deed goes unpunished. There's always, if you're talking about salaries, there's always somebody that doesn't think you're doing enough. But I'm very proud of that decade of impact that we made. And, we're less than 10% turnover those last 2 years that I was in that district. We were above 30% the first year that I was in that district, and we couldn't fill positions, but for the last years, every position was filled with a certified teacher in some shape, form, or fashion, and a lot of it had to do with salaries. And so I'm very proud of the process that we went through to get there. That's nothing that you can do overnight, because you have to study the district. You have to look at the things in your business models to make sure that you're efficient, that you're effective, that you're saving money. And we're on a fixed income. We only get so much money per child. And that money per child, it's not like we're at Whataburger. We can't go up on the number one, And so if we want to raise salaries, we can't say, well, state of Texas, you got to send us $500 more per kid. They get to dictate that, not the school district. And so we get what we get. And we're sitting here with this fixed income on these students. And so if you're on a fixed income, you've got a ceiling, and you can't go above that ceiling. And so the things that you got to do is to continually tweak and work your district to make it more and more efficient. And the savings that you get out of doing those things, you can then move over into employee salaries and reward your employees for the work and the service that they've done. For 10 and a half years in that school district, every year our employees got something. And that's the path that we're on. We've done staffing studies here. We've done salary studies here. And we're on the road to, regardless of what you hear out there, for a district our size, we're not overstaffed in administration. We're exactly where we should be based on that study. We are aligning our staff to make sure that our student to teacher ratios are where they need to be, that our services are where they need to be as far as support, in order to make sure that we're maximizing staffing and that we're doing the best job that we can there. But our salaries, we did give the state bump, as well as we give everyone in this school district is important. And right now, you seeing a lot of people pitting people against each other, and that's unfortunate. At the end of the day, everybody that works in this school district is an educator, and they're important to doing the jobs that we need done. And so whether it's bureaucratic paperwork that somebody's got to fill out that's mandated by TEA, if it's custodial, if it's child nutrition, if it's paras in the classroom, secretary at the front, bus driver, teacher in the classroom, all of those people go to the needs of serving kids. And so everybody got the same amount of raise to get us bumped up there. The other thing that I would say in that is a little misinformation that, that our stuff is skewed. And if you look at the original numbers that come out, you say, well, this group is paid more than this group and all that. There are reasons that, when you deal with groups and you're looking at salary studies and you're looking at this group here and you're saying, well, they're paid below the market. Well, yeah, their experience is below the market. And this group is above the market. Look at well, their experience is above the market. And so if you pay a market wage, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to align everybody with a market wage, and that takes time. But rest assured, we're making great gains in that area, and we want to make sure that we treat all our employees with dignity and respect, and from a sense of unity. That word again, unity, is so important. But I just wanted to, on that standard, to make sure that everybody knew that, you can't take bond money and you can't reward your staff. And so that's not a choice. That's not a choice that we make. You know, it's not like, well, I'll vote for the bond only if you do that. Well, that's illegal, and so we're not going to do anything illegal. And so, you know, those pots of monies have to be kept and managed in the way that's set forth in the Education Code and the GASB auditing standards.
So the other part of that is, well, when my property taxes go up, the school district gets more money. And no, again, we're going Kurtis's understanding level of school finance here. You saw the graphic with the bucket. You only get to fill your bucket to when it's full. And so the first money that goes in is your local revenue. After that, you get your federal and your other revenue. And then that state money comes in at the very end, and all it does is get you up to full. The bucket is not, when you see deficit budgets, it's not operating expenses, is what the state has set that is your maximum needed amount of money to run the school district. Is that correct?
Yeah, and you know, I'm as I travel around the community, I hear people talking about we need more of a tax base. Okay, well, what Kurtis is talking about here does not impact the tax base.
No.
If we had a nuclear power plant that went into effect, they come in, they bought the land, they constructed it north of SC Lee Junior High, and that thing was a $10 billion tax base. You know, right now Cove has $2.5 billion of tax base, of which only 1.7 billion is taxable. That is extremely low as far as a tax base. You know, we're about 1/10 the size of the districts that everybody look at, point to. Oh, you know, Killeen this or Belton that or Temple that. You know, we're about 1/10 their size as far as tax base goes. But it doesn't matter. As far as what you're talking about with
this is on the maintenance and operations side.
Operations side, we all get a fixed funding.
Yep.
So we're all getting the same amount per kid. Okay, and so that's irrelevant as far as that goes. Where does that help? The tax base help? It's on the INS side,
which is the bond.
Right. So if you've got if you're trying to build facilities and you've got a $10 billion nuclear plant that's sitting in your taxing jurisdiction, then the load of tax rate is much more palatable for everybody. It's evenly distributed, just like, you know, if Killeen borrows $100 million and Cove borrows $100 million, the taxpayers of Cove has to pay more money back to satisfy the needs of that bond than the taxpayers of Killeen do because of the tax base. So I hope that makes sense.
The next one, poor financial management. This one's come up. First ratings are out. FIRST is an acronym. It stands for Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas. There's a nice little logo to go with it as well. Coppers Cove ISD's never scored below an A. That has been around, I think this is the 21st year of it. And all 21 years, CCISD has received a rating or superior rating. That is the highest level you can get, and that is while the state judges financial management.
Yeah, it's an A rating, and like the one that will be presented at the board. And hey, listen, come out and listen to the public hearing. You know, the people who get on social media and talk about our school district's finances, I guarantee you, if you look back at the attendance of the past 5 board meetings when they talked about the review of the state financial integrity rating system, wasn't there. And so they wasn't there at the budget workshop when the board adopted the budget. They wasn't there when they set the tax rate, and they won't be there at the first report. So let me tell you the good news that comes out of that first report is, as Kurtis says, never scored below an A. You know, when I applied for the job in this district, I looked at the district's finances. They're online. You can look at them. You can pull them up. You can look at the audits. You can look at previous audits. And the district financially has been ran very conservatively. And so if you hear that there's mismanagement out there and those things, yeah, bring me your receipts, because I would love to see what you have, because Kurtis says they're A's, and the one that's going to be in October is a perfect rating.
The
100.
third straight perfect score.
100. You know, you can't get more than 100. And so, you know, and then of course, you know, I saw somebody reply to us out there that says, well, you know, who did you pay to get that rating? Well, we all paid the Texas Education Agency, because that's who does that rating. No one else. There's no third party, nobody's brother, cousins, third cousin's ex-wife's son or anything like that. It's from the Texas Education Agency. And so I think when you look at the financial management of that, when you look at the district's third party audit, you know, the district has always had an unqualified audit, which means that there are no findings. And so there was some accounting stuff in like a year ago that was pointed out that the district has since corrected. Those things were basically, the way monies was coded, it was not a reflection of the district's financial position. And so when you look at the conservative approach to the way the district spends money, the student outcomes, the things that's in this district, Ray Charles could see that this district is in good financial shape, and that doesn't just happen. You know, it happens because of good stewardship over 2 decades of it. And so people who want to assassinate the character of the district and talk about the poor financial management, I understand what it is. Somebody you disagreed with, more than likely. Somebody made a decision that you didn't like, and so then you say it's poor financial management, and that's not true. People can make decisions that you don't agree with, but you know that, I mean, since my wife doesn't have social media, you know, she makes
She's
decisions.
the smartest one here.
She makes, yeah, absolutely. She makes decisions with Amazon all the time that I don't agree with, you know, but I don't, we're not in poor financial management at the house, you know. She just made a choice to get on, you know, the Amazon and buy some stuff to decorate for fall, you know. And I'm like, what do we need for fall? I mean, we've got tubs of it in the attic, you know, but she said we needed some fresh stuff. So, I mean, that's a good example of what I'm talking about with financial management, is that somebody made a decision that you didn't like or you didn't agree with, and you got mad, and so you start saying that the district has poor financial management, and that's not correct. Let's just say the district made a decision I didn't agree with, and that's fine. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, and we got to understand that moving forward, that we're entitled to our own opinion, but not our own facts.
The next thing that you wanted to, or that we talked about in planning for this episode was, they brought up athletic uniforms, football helmets versus band uniforms, but again, those purchases were also handled differently. And so when we talk about football helmets and band uniforms, the band uniforms were approved. Was it September's board meeting that where new uniforms were approved, or was that August? It was recently, because you have to order them a year out. Right.
Yeah. You don't just go down to you know, your local hardware store and buy your roundhouse overalls off the shelf and go home, put them on and wear them. It's they're custom made band uniforms that, you know, that it takes a while. They'll make you a sample, and they send you that sample, and you try it on, you know, and you look at it. I mean, this isn't Amazon that we're ordering from. This is a company that custom makes these beautiful uniforms, and the kids try them on. You can look at them and make sure that's what you want, because they're substantial in cost.
Yeah, and they're supposed to last a long time, which is part of why the cost is so substantial. And so football helmets are also, you know, at the more or less, this isn't a perfect one size fits all, but more or less, most companies have some sort of blue football helmet in stock. Every helmet company has some sort of white helmet in stock. So it's a different purchasing process, but I want to turn this over to you to talk about this.
I'm old and cranky, and I'm tired of people pitting programs against each other. As I have said, our kids deserve our very best. We're working hard to do that. We are, Dr. Burns isn't here, and I don't know if there's anybody that asked him for band uniforms. But let me be real clear about this. All of our programs deserve champions for them, and we need to be those champions. But the programs aren't the same. They don't function the same. There's different buying cycles for different things that's out there. And people have different ways of doing things. But, we need to work hard at being unified.
Yes.
That one pack, one purpose that I talk about started out as a slogan for convocation, but it's truly a battle call for what we need in this district and a value for how we operate. One pack, one purpose. And so there's no competition. Our band is not competing against our football team.
No.
That's not it. They're two total different activities, and we love all those kids the same, and we need to start saying that. And so if somebody feels like that they're getting shied in one area or another and want to be a victim, that's not right. We're working hard to do everything that we can for everybody. And so, for people to sit there and talk about the district is awful because, it took 15 years to buy these band uniforms. They don't understand cycles that are in school districts, okay? And so athletic cycles are about 3 years on uniforms. Band cycles is about 10 years on uniforms. But all of that depends. I can guarantee you South Lake Carroll, they're getting new football uniforms every year. I know the superintendent up there, great guy. But I can guarantee you that whatever uniform that they're wearing this year, next year they won't be wearing, okay? So every place is different, but the average cycle that people cycle uniforms out, that's what they are. And so the band uniforms are made differently. Mm-hmm. There's nobody that's pulling on them and tugging on them and spitting on them and bleeding on them when they're competing. And they're made out of different material, and they're built to last longer. And they're more expensive, okay? So you spend more money on a band uniform than you do on a football uniform. Does that mean, oh my God, we love the band more than we do the football? No, that's not what we're saying. And think of this. Helmets are regulated now. And so every year, if you have a football team in the state of Texas, you are reconditioning or buying helmets. There's helmets that go to the boneyard, and what do? They drill through. There's a stamp that goes on there. They drill through them, and all you can do is throw them away. You can't use them anymore. Okay? And so you've got helmets that are going to the dumpster. You've got helmets that are being reconditioned that you send back to the company, and they rework them to make sure it's all about safety. And so you're buying new helmets and you're reconditioning new helmets. We've done that since those regulations came out. Every school district in the state of Texas better be doing it, because they're going to get kids hurt, and then they're going to be in trouble because they didn't follow the standards, okay? And so that's what's going on with helmets. That's what's going on with band uniforms. But let me, before I move off the band uniform, say this. Dr. Burns isn't here. He didn't leave me anything that said, hey, I've got these people asking for new band uniforms. And so the reason is all directors are kind of different. And you see a lot of directors that have kind of went away from band uniforms, and they only use them, at marching contests. And they're in T-shirts and blue jeans in the stands because in Texas high school sports it's hot. And they're marching at halftime. They're not marching in their uniforms, and so you've got a lot of band directors that have extended the life of their uniforms because they're doing different things. 20 years ago, it didn't matter how hot it was. They put those uniforms on and they went on Friday night and did what they were supposed to. And so those things have changed with some. You've seen our folks that have, they buy those showstopper tops and they wear those tops out to compete. And so they haven't had to buy the new jackets. And so those jackets have lasted longer. And also remember this, there was COVID. So for about 2 years, there wasn't a whole lot of stuff going on with touching and getting close, and we were keeping distance and things like that. And so, we haven't done anything criminal to kids as bad as what folks want to say. Oh, this is a travesty, that we've got 15-year-old band uniforms. No, it's a travesty if we keep going on. But we've got a band director that wanted new uniforms. The interim band director wanted new uniforms. They come to me. They talk to me about it. I hadn't been here but about 6 months, and the board has graciously bought new band uniforms, okay? The football helmet deal, as I've said, they have to be recycled. But I also say this, the district didn't pay for those blue football helmets. So the quarterback club did. So if the boosters pay for it, if they want to get new helmets every year, that's their prerogative. If they want to get, if they want to go above the district cycles and things, that's what booster clubs are out there for. If the band boosters want to buy new uniforms every 5 years and donate the money, that's fine. But we're taking care of our kids there. And to use that and to say that, hey, the district is a bunch of bums because they're not doing the right thing for kids, that is misinformation. And so we wanted to make sure everybody's got that out there on that.
I think I mentioned this when you and I talked about the band uniforms on a recent episode. I know some people see in my past life, before coming over here to head up communications, I was a sports reporter. But before that, my freshman year at Oklahoma State, I was in the Cowboy Marching Band. And they had bought brand new uniforms, I want to say my junior year of high school. I'm not that old. Not that long ago. But it's past the life cycle. And I saw a picture on Instagram this weekend. They're still using those uniforms.
Yeah.
Took about 18 months because it was a specific shade of orange. Like you said, you customize it. And so they wanted it to be Oklahoma State orange, not Oregon State orange, not Texas orange, and not Tennessee orange, Oklahoma State orange. And so there's that customization process, but that's a really good collegiate marching band that, wears those every Saturday for 12 weeks. Because even if you go on the road with the pep band, that's what you're wearing. You're pushing, it's 2025. I graduated high school in 2013. So you're coming up on 15 years with those uniforms. So that life cycle.
There you go.
Yeah.
15 years at the Oklahoma State University. And that's not, that is a very top tier university. Across the nation. They're well respected. They've got some great programs up there. And so, we're not just talking about some bumpkin college off somewhere. They're very astute in the Big 12.
Mm-hmm.
And so, echo what you said there. It's not like that, the kids of Cove have been any worse than the kids in Stillwater, Oklahoma have done.
Right. The next one on your list, it takes us to Proposition C, and that's the installation of artificial turf on one of the practice fields behind the athletic annex at Coppers Cove High School, and then the construction of an open-air pavilion to help outdoor activities meet UIL weather guidelines at this point. So I'll let you kind of drive it from there.
Okay. Well, here's my 2 cents on where we are with those things. And I understand there's people going to disagree with what I'm fixing to say, and that's okay. We are living in an era of water scarcity. We're living in an era of, everybody says, well, man, you was in Livingston and there's a huge lake right there that you're getting the water out of. Well, the water out of Lake Livingston is piped into Houston. And so Houston Water Supply gets the water, which comes out of the Trinity River watershed, into Lake Livingston, and then that water goes to Harris County into the city of Houston. And so, but in order for it to be there, they took penance on all of us folks in rural East Texas because they absconded all of their farmland along the Trinity River in order to make that lake. Part of the deal back was that they would sell water to the city of Livingston. And so, but even at that, the rates were going up on water pretty substantial. And so that's rural East Texas. We're sitting here in Central Texas, and water is, I think, even more scarce. And so because of water scarcity is one of the reasons that I say this. But I firmly believe that districts all over the state of Texas, if you got a baseball field, a softball field, or any practice fields for soccer, football, or whatever sport, UIL, marching band, or whatever, you need turf. You need turf there. And so that's my deal on turf, and I understand what the arguments are. The first argument is going to be, well, you know that there's injuries that occur on turf. Well, there's injuries that occur everywhere. I mean, as human beings, we can get injured rolling over in bed, all right, especially the older we get. But, I think the thing that walks back from me is that as superintendent in my former district, we had a practice field for the football team, and there were 6 arms or legs broken the year before we got turf. 6. The year that we got turf, there were 0. And so you can say, well, yeah, but look at all the studies and look at the professional athletes and everything like that. Well, yeah, I understand that too. But remember, those professional athletes is like a Mack truck hitting somebody on a football field. I mean, those athletes are very strong, very talented folks. And so, your injury goes up regardless of where you are. But if turf is taken care of, if it is, I know it's different. You sweep turf, you fill it in with the stuff that you put in there to take care of. If the things are done the way that it's supposed to be done, it is a safe surface, and it is safer than a whole lot of fields. 92% of the football teams in the state of Texas play on turf. And all of the UIL marching band, to my knowledge, practices on turf. And so with the water scarcity, with labor shortages, it's tough to get people that understand turf management from a grass perspective. Kyle Field's all grass, and I get that, but they're the Aggies. They got horticulturalists over there that specialize in those things. And so to have that, you invest in fertilize, herbicide, labor, and then even with that, you gotta bring sand in and go through the field and put sand down on top of your playing surfaces in order for it to pass compression test. If you do a compression test on it, it needs to be in a certain interval there. But I also pulled that you have 3 times more potential of play on an artificial surface than you do on grass. Why? Because grass has to rest. If you start out at Coppers Cove High School and you practice in the morning before school starts, and then you get on that grass for 8 more periods, and then football comes through and band comes through, you've practiced over 12 hours in that day on all of those different groups and entities. Grass can't handle that, and it'll die. And so grass has to have a rest process built into it, to where turf is, you've got 3 times more hours that you can participate on that. I also looked, and there's various studies about the finances of it. There was a study that I pulled up that said over 10 years you save $440,000 on turf versus grass. But the thing that strikes me is just the per hour usage. If you look at the per hour usage, the scale of grass is $49 an hour to $108 an hour. The scale of turf is $13 an hour to $57 an hour. On the top end, it's about half the cost of that. So I've been amazed that I've been called everything but a gentleman about this open air pavilion, and that there's this sinister name change on this thing. And when I look at that, I asked Kurtis. I said, Kurtis, can you go back to the bond website, the 2024 bond website, because I didn't coin the name open air pavilion. That's what other people call it in other communities. And when I got to this community, that's what the committee called it, was an open air pavilion. And so I don't know where the misinformation come from on that or anything like that, but you pulled the bond 2024, and what did you find?
So I went into the archives and I pulled it up, and it says, and the bullet point is right here, pavilion to cover multi-purpose artificial turf practice field. It was under the Proposition A breakdown underneath the Coppers Cove High School renovations and expansion. It was pavilion to cover multi-purpose artificial turf practice field, word for word.
Yeah, I don't know, and we've called it open air pavilion through the committee. I don't know where the miscommunication comes in there, and that folks, the school board gets called a liar, everybody's lying, and it's this bad deal. It's go back to that website, go to our current website. I can't understand where the mule is getting in the ditch, because I just think that is part of, a line. It's a line, yes, but it comes from the verbiage that was used in the committee, and there's nothing deceptive about it.
Maintenance and the way facilities have been maintained is something that's come up a few times, and not just on social media. I want to be very clear about that, because we've heard it at the walk and talks, we've heard it on the tours. That's something that comes up a little more frequently than I think I would have expected when this bond was called by the Board of Trustees 2 months ago.
Yeah, and this isn't a maintenance bond.
No.
And people try to confuse that. Well, the district did not properly maintain the facilities, and let me tell you, 50 to 60 years is the end of a life cycle because of the way the codes are in the school building. Okay, you start to enter in our average facility somewhere around 52, 53 years old. That information was put out in the last bond. That's nothing new. I'm not telling you anything. I'm just echoing the facts. And so, first of all, I would tell you this. If we reached 50 years, somebody maintained something. And so this notion that we're in the situation that we're in because we didn't maintain things is a farce. Our maintenance department is impressive. When I came in and I walked through, and Dr. Shuck was walking me through some facilities, and I said, hey, can we do this? Yeah, we can do that. Well, are we going to have to bid this out? No, we can do this in-house. Our maintenance guys have a lot of skill, more so normal than a lot of school districts. And so we're very fortunate to have them, and they do a good job with maintenance. Now, after COVID, most districts got off of their cycles of paint and carpet and things like that in buildings, and I get that, but this isn't a paint, a carpet deal. This is a reconstruction of classes inside that facility. And you say, well, Dr. Hawkins, it is a maintenance deal. No, maintenance is repairing things, and that's what the district has been doing, is repairing things. Okay, this bond addresses things in the INS side by new construction, remodeling, HVAC, all those things, which we don't have HVAC in there, but those things are all things that are in the bond. In the fund balance, we've got $7.5 million for repairs that's sitting over there that the board has approved. And so the HVAC and things like that are things that they're looking at coming up in this next run. But when you walk through our district, it's not a maintenance issue. It's an age issue. At some point, you have to do things differently. You know, the programs that we're trying to teach in our career technology classes today did not exist in early 1970s. And so when that building was built in 72, 73, 74, and they're getting kicked off, you didn't have kids that were trying to be dispatchers for their local law enforcement office. You didn't have kids that were trying to be EMTs. You did not have kids that were trying to be LVNs. And so the facility needs and programs have changed because of the societal demands which have changed them. And so, you know, the people that says, well, we're in this situation because of maintenance. We're in this situation, to go back to what I'm talking about, for the past 10 years, we've not had a bond. And the cycle of bonds is every 10 years. So it'd be just like this. Remember we talked about the cycle of them band uniforms?
Yep.
If the band uniforms was 20 years down the line, it'd be the same thing as our facilities. Our facilities are sitting here and they're at the end of that life cycle. And so, you know, there's going to have to be something done in some shape, form, or fashion. Something will happen because the life cycle's coming and we can't change that.
So that is the maintenance side, and this doesn't speak to their skill level, but I want everybody to understand the people who are in that maintenance office. Those are guys who would give the shirt off their backs if it was what people in this district needed.
Man, I think their motto ought to be, you call, we haul.
Yeah.
Because I've watched when there's a need in this school district, I've watched them. People say, Dr. Hawkins ain't paying attention. I pay attention more than what people think. And I've watched these men that you call them and they show up. If there's something broke, they show up, they get it fixed. If you have a need, you need something done, maintenance shows up. And when they show up, they're not groveling with you.
Oh, no.
They're not mad that you called them. They come running and they do what you need done as quick as they can, because you want to talk about customer service. Those people have a customer servant's heart, and you know, it's a pleasure to me to watch a department that operates with that value.
Yeah, they're usually the happiest people in the room, and I'm not blowing smoke up anywhere. That they're incredible human beings. So that's the maintenance side of it. Now let's go down to another note. This isn't going to do anything to expand the capacity and relieve the overcrowding at Coppers Cove High School if this bond is approved. It's at 55 new classrooms in Proposition A?
Correct.
But then there's the architecture term, or the election term is remodel. But as we heard Hudson Henderson talk about on an episode last month, renovation really stands for reconstruction, where you can clean up some of the layout there as well. It's more impactful than I think some people understand if voters approve Proposition A.
Yeah, you know, when you talk about the overcrowding, you know, Proposition A is to expand and renovate, reconstruct the cafeteria. And you've heard Melissa Bryan talk about, if you do the math, how long does a kid have for them to serve everybody? not for them to serve everybody with convenience, because how many seconds?
It is on average 12 seconds, but there is, in B lunch, it's less than 10.
So less than 10 seconds these kids have got to go through and get their food and get out into the cafeteria. If that's the standard, that's the standard. But the overcrowding of that cafeteria, there'd be more square footage added to that cafeteria. And so I think that's important to understand. That area of overcrowding is done by increasing square footage, increasing the design, and reconstructing that to where that you could have 3 lunches comfortably in there, and everybody would have a place to sit. So that is overcrowding. You say, well, what about the classrooms, Dr. Hawkins? Well, there's 32 teachers that are wandering aimlessly because they don't have a classroom, so they have to wander and share classrooms with everybody throughout the day, or meet into some commons area or something other like that to educate their students. And so obviously 55 is greater than 32. So you say, well, what are you going to do with those other rooms? Are you just wasting them? Or are you just building them? Well, there's labs that are put in place there. Those CTE labs is what we're talking about, because you can have a classroom for your nursery, your floral design rather. Your floral design kids have a classroom, but they also have a lab. Your culinary kids have a classroom, but they have a lab too that's connected to it, just like a science lab. And so I think it's important that you understand that all of that winds up being able to house the kids that we're able to house. About 1,700 students is what that high school is built for. And of course, we got 2,300 up there, and we have had 2,400 in that school. And so the additional 55 classrooms takes care of those needs. Overcrowding in the other 2 facilities on Proposition A, the same thing. You got a cafeteria there at Coppers Cove Junior High that was not built for the amount of kids that's there. And so once again, you're adding space to where the 2024 bond didn't do that. It just added restrooms.
So that's the capacity piece of it. Another piece, what happens if the bond doesn't pass? What is the cost of inaction, essentially?
Well, I think the greatest cost of inaction is fact. Okay, so let's stay with facts and nobody's opinions. And the 2024 bond to the 2025 bond, what is that cost? We know that it's cost $25 million in bonding capacity. Okay, we were at $200 million in the last bonding capacity, and now we're at about $175 million. So that's $25 million that it cost. And so people, please understand that your bonding capacity is not increasing, it's going down. So if this is the trajectory of it, at some point, I hope it bottoms out and goes back the other way. But that bonding capacity is real. So it's cost that. That's a fact. Also, from an inflationary standpoint, we've cost buying power about $28 million. So, there's $53 million or so that we look at, that we know that has been cost from just a buying power standpoint, from a capacity to do standpoint. That's substantial. And so if you do nothing, I've heard people say, Dr. Hawkins, I'm not going to vote for this because I'm going to wait for you to build a high school. There's not the bonding capacity to build a high school. That's a fact.
That's where we come back to that taxable property value in the district being at $1.7 billion versus other districts our size that have substantially more than that.
And so I go back to this, the choice that you have, the facts of where we're at today. Peel all the education language or the legal language. Take all the legal language out of the ballot that lawyers and the legislature and all those people have you do. Okay? Forget about that. It is about the standard, and what is the standard for our students. And so it's either what we have today or what that plan on the website is. Those are that's what you're voting for. You're voting for keep it like it is or to change it like is on the website. And you say, yeah, but if it fails, you're going to bring another deal. Like, I'm old and I'm tired, and I'm I want to focus on the needs of kids. So when the community sets the standard, from my standpoint, I don't answer for the board, but then that ought to be what the standard is. And so at that point, you've got overcrowding and those things, and that's what the standard is. And so there's no riders coming over the hill to help. There's not another plan of, all right, behind door number 3. That's not what it is. This community committee decided that this was a standard that they wanted to recommend for consideration, and that's what's out there for your consideration. If by chance that it doesn't get the amount of votes, then we're going to do the best that we can with what we got. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure the kids get what they need, to the best of our ability. You don't get in life to decide what cards are on the table. In life, you got to play the cards you got. And so that's what we will do moving forward. And so I just wanted people to understand this, though. The maintenance and operations cost will impact the kids we serve. Why do you say that? Well, if you've got an old vehicle, when you're driving this old vehicle around, there comes a point where you got to say, man, I'm spending more in repair costs than if I just went and bought a newer vehicle for me or a new vehicle. And that's where you're at. You're going to spend the money one way or another, but if you don't spend it on upgrades, then you'll spend it on M&O
repairs.
So that if you leave this bucket, there's 2 buckets there. If you leave that INS bucket gone, where we have no debt, then we will have to spend money in this M&O bucket. And the thing about the M&O bucket is, it is fixed cost. We're on a fixed amount of money, and so programs and services, at some point, we'll have to fix things with those monies that would normally go to programs, and opportunities for kids. And so that's the financial impact of if something doesn't happen.
And then the final that I'm aware of, the final thing that we wanted to touch on today is the funding impact. This is a question that's come up recently. Some of it, and I'll address this and then hand it off to you. What homestead exemption number did the district use for its financial impact?
Well, the one that we can 99% assure that nobody's going to vote against.
Yeah,
let's be exemption.
Let's be adults about
happened.
It. Yeah,
it's kind of like saying, "Hey, the sun's not going to come up tomorrow." Well, I bet it does. And so the same thing with this. They're the legislature. The tough part is to get the legislature to pass the exemption. Legislature's done their part. They've passed the exemption, and on the ballot, there will be a spot that you can vote for or against that. And I can just tell you that at the end of it, if y'all, I'm Baptist, so I'm not supposed to be voting or gambling, but if there was any odds that you would need to lay on that proposition is going to pass. Yeah. And so $140,000 is where that we've set that. We use the same. Whenever we change something, people wants to say, we didn't change anything on this open air pavilion deal, and people's accusing us of changing it. And so I was real clear that, hey, we need to use the same language that was used in the 2024 bond, and that was the house of $200,000. And so that's what we used to keep that consistency there. But let's be honest about that. We've got some high-end houses in our community, but we've got also a whole lot of houses that are at $140,000
or lower.
or lower. And so those homes, and there is a bunch of those homes that's sitting over there. And so, those people will be real kind in this tax plan. And so then we use, when we say the average, I don't know that the average is really a good word, but that's what people were comfortable with. So that's what we went with. And so we didn't run the numbers. Samco Financial run the numbers and give us those facts back with the limitations of what we described.
And Samco, specifically Doug Witt, who is our financial advisor, is arguably the most highly regarded school financial advising firm in the state of Texas. So they know what they're doing.
We could bring Doug in and talk, but you'd probably be better just to pull the owner's manual out of your car and just sit there and read through that owner's manual, and you'd have a whole lot more joy, because Doug is very intelligent and he can talk in depth about the financial aspect of schools, and at some point people get saturated with it.
Yes.
And so that's why we haven't had Doug on, because we want you to come back and listen to us. And we are hoping that we're fixing to pivot a whole lot of what we're doing and start talking about other things in the school than like coming up here at the end, but definitely other things along the way, because we want to engage with our community. We want to communicate. We want to talk about why we're doing things, what we're trying to accomplish, and the help that you can give, or the role that you would have in any of those processes. Last thing I would say about the taxing deal is this: if you look, I've got a sheet right here that was on the bond committee that we looked at, and that was just where we are in comparison with the Temples, the Beltons, the Huttos, the Midways, the Killeens. Everybody wants to be like Killeen. Well, for years, Killeen's INS rate's been way above ours. And so, people say, well, I want to be like Midway. Well, their rate's above us. I want to be like Dr. Ott's folks over there at Temple. They've had a 35-cent INS rate for quite some time. And so we have had the luxury of being low tax in our area, and so that's been 10 years of that. And so I think that's been a benefit that I would point out. The other thing that nobody's really asked me, I tried to think about this, Kurtis. I tried to say, okay, well, what is it that people haven't asked? And that is the selling of bonds. And because I think it's been one of those things that's kind of foreign, because we haven't done it in 20 years. Yeah. But you say, well, what is the financial funding impact? Well, your first year, you're not going to get hit with whatever you vote for, if you vote for it. If you vote for Proposition C, okay, if that's the one you picked and that's the only one that passed, that's a $2 increase per month is roughly where that's at. But the thing of it is it takes time to sell bonds, and you don't sell them all at once. You're talking about if Proposition A passed, there's 3 campuses there that's got to be phased construction, because kids are on those campuses. And so you're not going to sell all of those bonds at once. So all of it's not going to hit. When you talk about finances, a friend of mine up in North Texas, I've said this before, he passed bonds in 2023. And they went to 50% of their tax rate, or 50 cents on their tax rate. So they're maxed out. He's got a $500,000 bond election that he's called. And he said, well, wait a minute, he's maxed out. How are you maxed out and you've called for a $500 million bond? Well, because he's not going to sell all those things. He's a fast growth district for his size. And so he's called this $500 million bond because homes and infrastructure is growing all over his district, and he's going to be ready for when those kids hit. He's already passed the bonds, and now he's selling the bonds, and he's building the building, so he's ready for them without having to go out and go through this campaign. Because inevitably, a bond campaign takes about 18 months. And so we shaved things down, and we really went with the thing. We brought in experts. It wasn't a deal where we had to wander aimlessly. And then I say this, the committee invested a lot of intense time in a short period of time.
Yes, they did.
And so we didn't cut any corners on any of that. But it was done because people worked a lot harder than they normally do in a bond process.
Yeah, they were, having sat in on those meetings, there were some tired folks by the time we got done with those meetings. And because of it, it's a demanding job to serve on that committee.
It is. There was a lot of elbow grease, as my grandpa used to say. A lot of work being done on those things.
Okay, so that is, I think at the beginning I coined it misinformation management, but well, again, like Dr. Hawkins said, the goal in that segment is not to attack anybody. It is to simply try and address misinformed narrative, and kind of unite our community rather than dividing it, no matter how you choose to vote this November.
Yeah, let's all treat each other with common courtesy, dignity, and respect. Respect each other. There's no reason to call anybody names or any of that stuff. That's not who we are, who we need to be.
All right. As we wrap things up today, looking forward, Bulldog football is 5-1, 2-0 in District 12 6A.
Yeah, we've talked about in our earlier podcast band and where our band program's at and the great things that band's doing. We've got tennis that's in the playoffs. We've got success in lots of different areas. But I would just say this, the Dogs football is really been great to watch those young men grow up. I don't know that I can say it any better than the Killeen Daily Herald said it. But, when I looked at coming into the district, I had no intentions of the first area that we started recalibrating would be athletics. That was not on the top of my list. But it became abundantly clear once I got inside of the district that we needed to do some reorganization. And so that was something that happened fairly early on. And, whenever we reorganized everything and we had the position open, I had a lot of folks come to me and say, "Hey, man, I've been seeing what these folks are doing out there, and we really need a young guy to head up our program and to lead us to the promised land." And I listened to everybody. I sat down with the board and I made a profile based on what they wanted to see in the program. And then I tried to match that profile to what the candidates were as they applied and everything. And one guy became abundantly clear, and I guess he disappointed a lot of people because he wasn't a young guy. This is his 39th year of service, and that was Coach Southern. Coach Southern, I watched him, and we played against him in the same district when we were 5A in Livingston. And I watched the job that he did when he came in Huntsville, and the discipline, the old school discipline he had, and then the performance that his kids had over the years over there on the other side of the lake. And I was very impressed with him. And so he went through the process, and he came out the top dog. And, it's been great because I think the Killeen Daily Herald said in 7 years there's been 13 wins. We've not had a playoff spot in 6 years.
7?
I'm sorry, we haven't had a winning season in 6 years. And so here's the deal: we're sitting here 5-1, and I think if if we stop the world today, I think we would have to say that Bulldog football has been successful. It's been reunited back to the unity, back to the traditions that we've had here in Cove of the standard that Coach is trying to set. He brought in a bunch of great coaches with him, good men and women into his program that is taking care of kids and doing the things that we need. They're good people first, and they're teaching the lessons that need to be taught in order to have a successful program. But I couldn't be any more happy with the Bulldogs than where we are today. I talked to the quarterback club last Friday and the kids, and I told them just that. I really felt like that they were going to beat Bryan, and then we would be down to 4 schools that are sitting out there that are fabulous in their own regard. And I just know the amount of improvement we made. Look at the improvement we made with Georgetown, how many points they scored or beat us by. Look at how many points that Bryan scored on us. And both of those areas were addressed. And I think our kids are going to go in there and compete. And here's going to be over the next 4 weeks what you're going to see. You're going to see a group of kids that are still new in the process, because you judge a coach off 3 years, not 1. So these kids are learning, and they're absorbing, and they're doing everything they can. And it's tough on those kids to be disciplined. What I'm talking about, discipline to do the right thing, discipline to do your job the way it's supposed to be done, all the time that it's supposed to be done. And so those kids, as normal humans, or as human beings, we take the path of least resistance, and we go back to the way that we've always done things. And so Coach has got this standard set here, and he's trying to get these guys to play and perform at this level. And so in order to do that, they've got to discipline themselves to go through, trust the process, do the things that need to be done in order to get the things that they want in the end. And so it's up to all of us to come support them through thick and thin. Win, lose, or draw the rest of this time, we've got to love the Dogs. And do I think that the kids can compete every week? Yes. Do I think the kids can win every week? Depends on how much they focus. But here's the deal. If they do the right things, they can be special. They can make a huge leap and do some great things over the course of these next 4 weeks. So I look forward to it, and I encourage everybody to come out and support the Dogs. Get loud, get your cowbells. I was sitting over there last Friday night. My wife's watch was going off 90 decibels, 100 decibels in the Central Texas Open Air Stadium that's over there, I thought that was wonderful. And so the kids are going to do it. They're going to have to do it because we're all behind them.
Dogs are in the hunt, not something that we've been able to say in this town for a long time. Just to kind of reiterate your point, I've always been a big high school football guy. I grew up in a small town like this, kind of like you did, and it's a special thing. It really is. But that next 4 weeks, those are the 5 teams competing for those 4 playoff spots right now. And so, if you want to see the schedule, visit coveathletics.ccisd.com. For more information on Bond 2025, visit ccisdbond.com. You can also navigate to it from the district website, ccisd.com. And if you want to see for yourself the stuff we talked about, comparing Bond 2024 to Bond 2025, the Bond 2024 page I've pulled out of the boneyard, as you called it. It is under the district tab at ccisd.com. Dr. Hawkins, thanks for your time. Enjoyed it today.
We promise that we'll be shorter, and we promise that we're going to pivot our focus and go on some other things in the near future. Thank you for listening. Share so that we can get our listeners up and that we can educate everybody. Kurtis, thanks for all you do. God bless, and go Dogs.
You can find this podcast anywhere great podcasts are found: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, and more. For Dr. Brent Hawkins, Superintendent of Coppers Cove ISD, I'm Director of Communications Kurtis Quillen, saying thanks for watching or listening. Good night, and go Dogs.